What are bonds? Bonds are long-term contracts under which a borrower agrees to make payments of interest and principal on specific dates to the holders of the bonds. And bonds are classified into four main types: treasury, corporate, municipal, and foreign. Who issues bonds? Treasury bonds are issued by the United States federal government, and corporate bonds are issued by corporations. Municipal bonds are issued by state and local governments, and foreign bonds are issued by foreign governments or foreign corporations. And why do these entities issue bonds? The United States federal government issues treasury bonds to fund deficit in the budget and to fund infrastructure. The first open market treasury bonds were war bonds issued to raise funds for the military. These bonds have a maturity of either 20 or 30 years, and interest payments are made semi-annually until maturity, and income received is only taxed at the federal level. These bonds are considered risk-free but do pay a low interest rate. Corporations issue corporate bonds to fund new projects, purchase new equipment for the research and development of potential new revenue streams, to build new plant, and or to refinance their current debt. Bonds differ from stocks because the bondholder does not own share in the company as they do when they own stocks. And interest payments are generally better than government bonds. But because of this, they could be riskier than government bonds. Companies could go out of business, and interest payments and or the initial investment may never be repaid to the investor. State and local governments issue municipal bonds to generate funds for capital investments, such as your schools, highways, water and sewer systems, park and recreation facilities, and hospitals. The most common types of municipal bonds are general obligation, or GO, and revenue bonds. The general obligation bonds are backed by the full faith and credit of the issuer, which has the power to tax residents to pay the bondholders. Revenue bonds are backed by the revenues from specific projects such as your toll roads, bridges, utilities, colleges, etc. These bonds are considered safer than corporate bonds, and interest income is generally exempt from the federal income tax and, in most cases, exempt from state and local taxes if the investor resides in the state where the bond is issued. Foreign corporations or foreign governments issue foreign bonds for the same reason, to generate capital. A few different types of foreign bonds are samurai, issued in Japanese yen, Yankee, issued in US dollars, Matilda, issued in Australian dollars, or Bulldog, issued in British pounds sterling. The par value of a bond is the stated face value of that bond. It represents the amount of money the issuer borrowed and promised to repay on the maturity date. Coupon payment is the dollar amount of interest paid to each bondholder on the interest payment dates, and the coupon interest rate is the coupon payment divided by the par value. The specified date on which the bond issuer must pay the par value to the investor is called a maturity date. Additionally, most corporate bonds contain a call provision which allows the issuer the right to call the bonds for redemption, typically at a higher amount than par value, and this is known as provisions to call. Here is an example of a 30-year, 7% quarterly coupon bond with a par value of $1,000 that may be called in 10 years at a call price of $1,100. The bond sells for $1,200. So what is the bond's yield to maturity? The yield to maturity is the total return if an investor holds the bond until maturity. The periodic yield to maturity is 1.4% per quarter, and the annualized nominal yield to maturity is 5.62%. So what's the bond's current yield? The current yield measures the bond's return based only on the annual coupon payments, calculated as annual coupon payment divided by current price. In this example, the bond pays $70 annually, or $18 per quarter, and sells for $1,100, so the current yield is 6.36%. So what is the bond's capital gain or loss yield? The bond's capital gain or loss yield accounts for changes in the bond's price over time and is calculated as yield to maturity minus current yield. The yield to maturity of 5.62% minus the current yield of 6.36% reflects a 0.75% capital loss over time. So what is the bond's yield to call? The yield to call is similar to yield to maturity, but it assumes the bond will be redeemed early at the call price of $1,100 in 10 years instead of a maturity of 30 years. The bond's yield to call is 1.3% per quarter, and the annualized nominal yield to call is 5.19%. Since the bond is currently priced at $1,200 and the issuer can redeem it for $1,100 in 10 years, the yield to call is lower than the yield to maturity, indicating the lower return if the bond is called early.